Good stuff.
There we go.
go.
Good job. You did
Come on,
it.
Wani. The Asian pulled through.
Okay,
Okay,
sorry
we're
about the delay, guys. We had this cool introduction panned out, but Wyatt's at the library and he can't have a gun there, so we're gonna have to just wing this one. So
At least not for long.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So it's Tank Brolios. Wyatt, Juan, you guys want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Wyatt. I'm from Utah, Harriman, Utah, in case anyone was curious. Shoot production. Cool.
Okay,
Juani?
I'm Sheik. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I'm from South Korea. I live in Washington State. I shoot production. I love shooting.
Okay, I'm Eric. I'm from Boise, Idaho. Production shooter, A class for life, and we got a guest today with us. We call him Master Kenny. Like I said in the notes, we wanted Max Michelle for our first guest, but we had to settle for Kenny. Max is off winning competitions and stuff like that.
Yeah. Sorry to disappoint.
Yeah, I know, right?
Hey, you know what? Kenny has a better beard than Max, so I'd say we're the winners in the end.
There you go. It's all about the beard. So Kenny is a local Boise shooter.
Yeah.
You ask, why would we have a single stack shooter and someone who shoots STI on the Tank Brolio shows? But STI. But Kenny's a good dude. He's a great competitor. His sportsmanship is awesome, and he's got a lot of great input that he can share with you guys. One of the main topics we wanted to talk about with Kenny is Kenny's recently transitioned from the limited division to the low cap division, and we wanted to hear his thoughts and stuff on that. So, Kenny, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Kenny. I am in Caldwell, Idaho. I shoot out at the Nampa Range and the Emmett Range a little bit. I've been doing USPSA off and on for, I don't know, I first shot just a little bit, maybe 10 matches or so when I was like 12 or 13 years old with my dad, and didn't do it again for a really long time. I actually moved out to Idaho when I was 22 and bought a Glock and went out and shot an indoor IDPA match and got second. So I was like, I should do this again. And only shot a couple of matches, laid low for a couple of years, and I had a buddy want to buy a handgun, and he said, and he knew that I liked guns, and he's like, would you teach me how to shoot a handgun? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I went out and set up like El Presidente and stuff like that, and I taught him how to draw from a holster, and he was just, what is all this stuff? How do you know how to do this? Did you make all this up? And I'm like, no, I used to shoot competitively, just barely, but my dad did it for a long time and kind of got back into it like 2 years ago and didn't quit this time. So it's been 1.5 to 2 years of pretty regular competition and getting back into it, and it's really fun. So
yeah. So one of the reasons why I wanted Kenny here is Kenny's been a big-time limited shooter for the longest time, and I've been begging him to come to low cap because I want some more competition locally. Not that we don't have it; it's just the more competition, the better. Especially steal some points away from range lore each match.
Hey, good last match, bro.
Thank
Props
you.
to Eric. Props to Eric right there.
Okay, but so Kenny, he wanted to hold off until limited nats,
Yeah.
and his first match that he shot low cap division, we're on our first stage and we're doing our walkthrough, trying to come up with plans, and just watching the smile on his face and how big his eyes were getting, I'm like, that summed up what I try to explain about low cap division to everybody, and I'm like,
Yeah.
he's getting it. And so tell us about it. I mean, tell us about going from limited to single stack.
Well, I had done it a little bit when I first started. Back up like 2 years ago, I was shooting production. I had a Glock 17, and I shot prod for like 8 months maybe. But that was the beginning of really getting back into it. I would shoot 1 or 2 matches a month at the most. It didn't really dry fire, didn't really anything. And I went and actually took Stager's class like 1.5 years ago, and that kind of was the catalyst to get back into it really the first time seriously. And prod was fun, but I had the opportunity to get a more competitive gun than that and not have to pay for it. So that was really great. just worked out in my favor. And yeah, I mean, hopping into limited for the first time was like, I don't know, it was super addictive. I mean, those guns are just really fun. It was run and gun to the max, but it was very, very different than what I was used to. And it was at a good time to transition over to something new because it was like fresh start. I came in at B class, like my initial classification, and made A the next month, and then it took 7 months, I think, at A class to make master after that. And it was hard. I was pushing really hard on classifiers and stuff. I don't really even remember the question. What were you asking? I'm just talking about what I've been doing for the last couple of years.
Talking about like a transition from limited to production.
Okay, yeah. So limited. So the goal was make master, GM someday, but like I wanted to make master because it seemed more attainable, and it was the next step anyway. So after making master, I shot my first couple of big matches. I shot the Golden Bullet, which is like a Northern California sectional thing, and I got second in limited there overall, and that was cool. And then I shot the state match, Idaho state match, and got second. And I wanted to switch over to low cap. Kind of the whole time I'd thought about, do I want to shoot production? Do I want to shoot single stack? I have all this trigger time on a 2011, which is pretty much a 1911, and I wanted to go production just because there's more heat in production in most places, but we kind of have a nice little pocket of single stack shooters, more than I think most clubs have. Like, we'll have 40 or 50 people show up, and we'll have 7 or 8 or 9 single stack shooters, which is pretty decent.
And some decent single stack shooters too.
Yeah, and that's decent awesome. Single stack shooters for sure. And also all the low cap guys tend to squad together anyway, and we pretty much it doesn't really, you kind of choose 8-round major or 10-round minor, and which gun do you want? And you ultimately just kind of shoot against each other, whether or not you're in the exact same division.
Yeah.
But switching over from high cap to low cap, what was it like? It was weird. It was weird in a good way, because I kind of have always said that, like, even though I loved shooting limited, and this is what I think right now, being back into single stack for the first time for 2 months. So it's still like honeymoon phase, I guess. But I've always thought that, like, if I was going to be really good at one division, it would be a low cap division, because I tend to be a kind of like steady Eddie shooter. Like, I don't miss a lot. I don't have a lot of pickup shots. I don't make a lot of mistakes. And if I get beat, it's usually because somebody really went for it and was more aggressive than I was. And I push myself to be a little bit more aggressive, but go into a low cap division, it tends to favor, or at least reward, the shooter that doesn't make big mistakes, because you never have a lot of rounds in the gun for pickup shots, especially single stack major. You come up to an 8-round array, I have 9 in the gun. And something I brought up to Eric was, so if I go to my first 8-round array and I have 1 pickup shot, I miss 1 time, then I go to slide lock. That means every other 8-round array, I go to slide lock every single time, because the reload is 8. I don't get the buffer.
Yeah.
So it just really, really is like, okay, the buzzer's about to go off. Don't mess up. Don't forget the plan. Don't forget the target. Don't miss steal. Don't mess up. And I really like that pressure, and it plays well into what I'm good at, which is don't mess up. That's what I tend to do fairly well.
Now I got a question for you. Some guys will have a single stack minor, so they can have 10 rounds, and they'll have a single stack major for 8, and they'll, depending on the match, is what they'll choose. What do you think is a bigger factor, having 10 plus 1 or major power factor scoring?
I think it's shooter dependent. For me personally, I think that you'll always be the best if you specialize, and even though it's a small difference in mindset, it is a difference in mindset between shooting major and minor. So for me, I wanted to pick one and stick with it. And even though I'm never going to win nationals or anything, I would love to be competitive at those big matches like nationals and Western State single stack, and those matches tend to favor major, so I chose major. Gotcha. I chose major, even though if it might put me at a small disadvantage locally. It depends on the stages, it depends on the day. Like last time when we shot on Saturday or Sunday, whichever day it was, there was a 26-round all-steel stage. I ended up still doing well on it, but
background.
Yeah. I ended up doing well on it, but I still only had, major power factor and 8-round max. Like, that would have been an advantage shooting minor that day. There's no question about it.
That makes sense, yeah.
No question.
So now,
So I got a question. I actually shot my first ever major gun this last week at a local
Yeah.
match or an indoor match. It was a 2011 major, and holy shit, that thing kicks like a mother bear. I couldn't believe it. I was like, my girl hands are not used to an actual round. How do you deal with that with, like, I don't know. I mean, how heavy is your single stack gun? Like 38 ounces, 40 ounces?
Show them the guns, Kenny. Show them the guns.
Yeah, I don't know. I got used to it. Like, I don't know what to say. I think I've told Eric this a couple of times that I can't even hear myself talk. It's so weird with two earbuds in. That I think that major guns make you better fundamentally because you can't get lazy with your grip and stance and posture and stuff like that. Although we're running around, but you do come into a position and try to give as much of a, have as much of a good stance and good posture as you can. But grip, especially all the time, you cannot be lazy with the gun that is shooting major power factor or it's flipping all over the place. And also I noticed that I really only noticed that a major gun feels snappy when I switch back and forth. Like when I would go 2 or 3 months straight and only shoot my limited gun, because I had a single stack 9 before, but I'd only shot it in like IDPA and for Steel Challenge and stuff. But when I would go months at a time and I would never shoot it, my limited gun felt normal. When I would switch to minor, it felt really nice, and then my limited gun felt snappy. Yeah. That was another reason that I was like, well, maybe I should just shoot major all the time. And it's just like when I pick up a handgun and pull the trigger, that's what it feels like. Yeah. I just don't shoot minor, so it just doesn't. I'm not used to it, and it doesn't slow me down because I'm just ready for it.
Yeah. And to add to that, Kenny's notorious for running like 175 power factor ammo on top of that.
Yeah, I got shit
His gun
like
kicks.
one time for using my dad's gun and my dad's loads at like a local outlaw match that were way under power factor, not by choice, but we had to knock around those MGM spinner things, and it takes like even with major, it takes like
what the hell are you doing,
3 or 4 good hits to get it to go over, and I couldn't get him to go over at all because it was a super light 45 load. So
yeah, since
then I make sure that I always make major. My local stuff, even all the time, it's 174, 175.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about why I made the switch to low cap, and I want to hear you guys' opinion on this. So I was a limited shooter for the longest time. That's what I came in at, and I was a hoser. I would go around running fast and just spraying, and nothing could calm me down.
Wait. You just said was.
I was more of a hoser. Okay, so more of a hoser. So I figured if I went to production, I would have minor power factor scoring, forcing me to shoot more accurate because of the penalties. I mean, they were harsh. Charlie and a Delta is harsh. On top of that is I go into, let's say, a 4-target array. I don't have very many misses. I can't throw 3-4 on a target and call it good. You know what I mean? And that's what I used to do. I used to come up, to an array and just Blake drill that bad boy, and I can't do that anymore. And so for me, it's making me focus on my fundamentals and my core skills a lot more. But do you find any differences in the way you shoot single stack, Kenny, versus how you shot limited?
The only one of my favorite things about single stack major specifically is that it's really fun that it's halfway just like limited and halfway even stricter than production, because you get major power factor scoring. So if you're shooting at the pace that gives you all alphas, you're shooting too slow. I know people say that that's not true, and it should the goal is all alphas all the time, but realistically, even when looking at the absolute best shooters on the planet, they don't shoot all alphas all the time. At least not the major guys don't. So if you were shooting at a pace that gets you all alphas all the time, you're shooting too slow if you're shooting major. But when it comes to steel, you have less pickup shots than anybody else other than revolver. So what I like about single stack major is when there's paper, you have to shoot it just as fast as limited. You got to shoot it on the move. You got to split quickly. You got to transition quickly. You don't have time to sit there and shoot a bunch of alphas. And when it's time to shoot steel, you do not have extra rounds in the gun to miss. You just don't. So don't, because standing reloads suck. I had 2 standing reloads on my first single stack match, and I don't think I've had an unplanned standing reload since. Because on that first match, I was still in that mindset where it's like, well, I'm going to go into this port and have 8 rounds to shoot, and I want to hit everything, but it's okay if I don't. I'll just pick it up. And then you realize very quickly it's not okay if you don't, you don't want to pick it up. You would rather spend an extra half a second on your sights than a second and a half doing a reload.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, points are always a big thing, especially if you shot minor. I mean, I know you don't, but yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, we want to go to our topic?
Yeah, the Steve Anderson.
Okay, cool. So I've been kind of a little curious on what to do for my training plan. As far as I want a schedule to train, and I also want to have an idea of what I'm going to be doing every single day. Yeah, basically training every single day. So what I do generally, or at least I have for the last like 6-7 months, is an hour and a half of dry fire every day. But I haven't really been like specific, this is what I'm going to train at this time, and this is what I'm going to train at this time. So I sent a message to Steve Anderson. If you're watching this, awesome, big fan. But I sent him a message and asked him about my kind of training plan, or at least my proposed training plan. And that's to split my training into blocks and then focus on that specific thing for that entire time. So I kind of figured we would just talk about what our training plans are now and how we dry fire now and compared to how we would want to dry fire. And then we could kind of bring up how Steve Anderson said for us to dry fire, if that makes sense. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah.
You want to start off, Wani, or do you want to start off, Wyatt?
Have Juani start off.
So we're just basically talking about Dryfire, right?
So yeah, the original question came from RW. I don't know if we're going to name him yet. RW. He's a Utah guy, but he asked us how we dry fire and then how we record what we dry fire and how we see progress in it. So you can see tangible progress. So I figured we could have Juani start.
Yeah. So basically, not right now, but until the shooting season, I would say till October. No, actually, I hurt my thumb August. So till August, until I hurt my thumb, I dry fired. I would say 5 to 6 days a week, and I don't record them. I don't record how many hours. I used to in the beginning phase. I read Steve Anderson's book, and I had his dry fire book too. Thank you.
Whose cat's having sex in the background?
I know, right? I had to let her in. She's
Oh, okay. So, all right, sorry, Juani, go ahead.
I don't keep up with how many hours dry fires I do, but I know for sure that I dry fire until I'm satisfied. And to reach the goal, I should say. When I reach a certain goal I have that day, I'm satisfied with the dry fire session. And how I set the goal is not something crazy. It's just, let's say, raising my bar a little higher or maintaining my bar, which means if I had, let's say, 1 second draw, if my goal was to raise the bar, I would go for a 0.9 second draw. Or if my purpose of dry fire that day was just to remain at skill level, this unicorn. Sorry. Keep trying to eat me. Okay.
Is he swearing in Korean or something?
I swear, those are some Korean swear words.
No, I was actually talking in English, bro. Yeah, so, yeah, if the dry fire purpose, which I have two, well, one is to get better, or second is to maintain my skill level. So I do that, and that's my satisfactory level. So, but there's one exception. I sometimes say, oh, I'm going to do dry fire for about an hour. Sometimes it becomes 2-hour session. Sometimes it becomes 15-minute session. Oh, not 15, maybe 30 minutes. The reason being it becomes 30 minutes is because I got frustrated on certain things. If I say I want to work on reload and I try to do reload and I get mad sometimes. This thing is not going in, and sometimes it's flying off of my hand. Sometimes my thumb gets bumped up to the magazine pouch, so my thumb's hurting. Now I get mad. Then I stop it.
Yep.
I either try to focus on other technique, which is draw or some other skill level. I will focus on that, or I would just stop. I would just put the gun down and do computer game or maybe reloading, something like that. I may come back to dry fire after 30 minutes of break, but that's my usual goal. And then also, there are many guidebooks. I'm sure Wyatt's going to talk about Steve Anderson's book, but there are many guidelines like Steve Anderson's book, Ben's book. I actually have them. I have a lot of books, but my Dryfire, I started my Dryfire when I started shooting USPSA based on their books. But now my Dryfire session is, I would say, completely different than books. I don't have certain repetitions I go, or I don't use part-timer. I don't use drill. I may do drills sometimes. If I start all over, I had a break after hurt my thumb. I didn't do Dryfire for, 2 months at all. I didn't almost touch the gun. And then when I came back, I started with a drill. But once I'm over that period where I try drills, I don't do drills, which means I don't do stuff over and over and over. My Dryfire session right now is completely no drill. It's randomized stuff, but everything I do touches on every skill level. It touches on movement, it touches on transition, reload, draw, and rear start position, everything. So my Dryfire session today or tomorrow is not going to be the same as yesterday.
And Kwani,
yeah.
What do you think about filming that so we could see what you do in a Dryfire session? Maybe put like a webcam up and, so we can see how you're setting up targets and what repetitions you're running through.
I have it already on my YouTube channel.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
He does.
Cool.
Couple. Yeah.
I don't stalk you quite as thoroughly as Wyatt does, apparently.
Hey, you know what? That's how we met, okay? That's how we begin That's how we begin, okay?
So what I can tell is my Dryfire session is not gonna be same as other people. First, in my Dryfire session, in skill development phase, I always video myself at home. I video Dryfire myself. So sometimes I spend more time video analyzing myself more than actual pointing the gun at a target. And yeah, like I said, I don't use part-time anymore. I don't have to go 0.7 part-time all the time. I don't want same thing over and over, because you don't do same thing over and over unless it's a classifier stage. And even if it's a classifier stage, the environment is different, your heartbeat is different, your digest is different, your mental level is different, everything is different. So at home, if I do it 0.7 draw, I don't make it at the range, different environment, different temperature, and everything. So I want to mix all the time, so my body is not focusing on doing the same thing over and over, but quickly being able to adjust into new environment. That's what makes my shooting develop really fast, because I want to randomize a lot of things, different scenarios all the time. So I don't want to learn how to do the same thing over and over, but I want to learn how to quickly adjust myself, and according to the scenario of the stage, quickly adjusting myself, adjusting my skill level to it. So if I do repetitive things, my knowledge level is only to that specific scenario, only to the specific draw or specific drill. But if I randomize all that stuff, and I can say I've done almost everything I will see at the stage. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah. And also, one of the reasons I don't use part-timer in Dryfire is because there are a couple of reasons. It develops me avoiding feeling of being chased, so I can only focus on the target and the sight, and I can make the call, calling the shot properly. And also the other thing is the goal. If I use part-timer, my goal is different. My goal is just to make that time. It's not really shooting for me. It may be different for somebody, but for me, if I use part-timer, my goal is different than not using timer. If I'm
Yeah.
not using the timer, my goal is winning the stage. My goal is being efficient. My goal is hitting the target, hitting A zone, stuff like that. But if I'm using my timer, my focus becomes making the timer, pulling the trigger on before I hear the beep. Kind of like that.
Yeah, and a lot of us can agree on that. It basically forces bad form versus correct form. So, can't.
Kenny,
So
you want to
Kenny?
go for it?
Sure. Mine's a lot like Juani's, but not nearly as regimented. I did a lot of those type of drills. I would set up, whether it was just draw to one shot or dry firing 4 aces or that type of stuff, and trying to nail down par times. I did that for, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months. Regularly, I would say at least 2 to 3 times a week for, let's say, a half hour to 1 hour. To if I was feeling really good, I'd go for a couple of hours. Just kind of depended. And I did see some improvement. I felt like I started, like, I would react to the beep really well, so that was good. And I would not wait at all after my last shot would break to get going, to like punch the mag release and get to the mag well. All of that got really good, but what went poorly for me after that was I started shooting in the match, or not shooting. It wasn't anything with shooting. It was everything else in the match. Unlike I had done before, I started to make stupid mistakes. And we haven't shot together other than me and Steiner, but like I don't usually make stupid mistakes. That's not like my temperament.
So let me add to that. One of Kenny's biggest tools and advantages that he has is he's consistent. I mean, even if a stage goes bad, he's still in the zone. He maintains. I mean, his consistency has never faltered. Sorry, go ahead, Kenny.
No, yeah, but it did for a little bit because I did drop a mag. I didn't drop it. I like almost launched it past the gun and like had to grab it, and I like dropped mags into my chest a couple of times and was going so hard down to get to the gun from like an unload start, like a hands-on X's or something, that I never, like, it was never unsafe or anything, but like went to grab the gun and my hand missed where it should have been, and I kind of went to grab it anyway, because when you train yourself where it's like, I'm going to hear a beep and then I'm going to hear a second beep, and the goal is to get done before the second beep. If stuff goes bad, you might still keep going. So I don't think it's unsafe or anything like that, but it was detrimental for me. So I have started doing dry fire with either no timer at all or only using a start beep, and very rarely will I check with a par timer to make sure that I haven't gotten slower, and I haven't. So, but what I've found is that like you can't just dry fire one way for everything. You got to choose, what are you trying to get better at? Are you trying to get faster? But speed's great. But speed only really matters if you can call on it right now, and if you can call on it under pressure. And the big one that I think a lot of people omit is call on it cold, like to call on it for the first run. And Eric said something on the second stage, because I had shot the first stage of the match on Sunday really well, and he goes, man, you in those first stages, and I was being a jerk, and I just said, I don't suck at them. And I didn't mean for it to be like stuck up or anything, but it's not like I had an amazing first stage. It was just as good as my other 5 stages for the day. And I think that I mean, if you can do that, if you can get yourself in the right mindset to have all of your stages, like you don't go stupid on your last stage because you want to hang it all out there, and you don't go easy on your first stage, and you also don't push yourself past, like, why would you shoot before the sights, before you see what you need to see? Sometimes you don't barely need to see anything, then pull the trigger then. Sometimes you need to see a lot. We started on a 26-round all-steel stage, and I had 4 pickup shots, and I was pretty happy with that. It was including a Texas start. 2 of them were on the start. So, like, I was very happy with that for a cold start on, to a match. But
yeah.
I feel like the way that I dry fire helps that. because I'm not ever chasing a par time. I'm chasing vision. I'm chasing, like, when I hear the start beep, I get to the gun, and when my hand's good enough on the gun, which is usually right away, but sometimes not, but when it is, I pull the gun out and I see the front sight, and when I see the front sight, then I pull the trigger. So most of the time I see the front sight right away, but if I don't see it right away, then I don't pull it right away. And that's exactly what you want to do in a match, in my opinion. You want to get to the gun as fast as you can, get it out, get the front sight on target, and pull the trigger, and do a 0.8, 0.7, 0.8 draw in a match every time. Of course you do, but you don't get to choose all that stuff. You don't get to choose your start position unless you're the match director, and you don't get to choose what target you're going to draw to all the time because you can't just draw to 7-yard open paper all the time. So learning to get the gun out of the holster when my hand is right and learning to pull the trigger when I see the front sight, not to beat this part time, has made a big difference for me. And reloads too. At first I was, not at first, but after those couple of months, I was pushing reloads so hard that, I could do a sub-second reload and be reacting to a beep. So what does it take? 0.2 to react to a beep or something? And I could still knock out sub-second reloads, but like half the time. And the other half the time, I would throw mags across the room. And I'm like, well, this is stupid. I need to stop doing that. And I'm not that guy. So I'm like, this is stupid. I need to stop doing that. So I stopped doing it. And now, I don't know, maybe in a match they're 1.2s, but they always go in the gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like...
I'm moving my feet anyway.
Sounds like your focus and my focus in Dryfire is very similar.
Yeah, it sounds like it, for sure.
Yeah.
And for me, it was through trial and error, because if you listen to the podcasts and you listen to the Dryfire gurus, and I don't mean to say that they're wrong for them or for their level, that's what they're working on is speed, speed, speed. You want to always be pushing faster, faster, faster in Dryfire, and that's cool for them at their level and what they need to improve on. What I needed to improve on was consistency. I don't want to be slow. It's not about being slow. It's about not screwing up. There's nothing that hurts more in a match than a big screw up. Like if you got a classifier and to make 100%, you need a 1 second reload and all the splits and all that stuff, and you do a 1.1. It's not like you've screwed up your match. It's but if you drop a mag, you have. And if you have people that are really close to you, like where I shoot, I've got guys like Range Lawyer and I've got guys like Steiner that if I have a bad day, I will get beat. Or even if I have a mediocre day and they have a good day, I will get beat. So I just try hard to not have bad days. Somewhere between mediocre and real good.
And that's when I say you're consistent, Kenny. That's the part I'm talking about right there.
Right.
It's just, So I envy that.
Sunday was as good of a match as I've maybe ever shot. As far as for me, just being, I was just in the zone the whole time. Saw the sights on everything.
Kenny was like what? You were like what, 4 points away from a limited GM shooter?
Yeah, and
shooting single stack.
He's an Australian though.
Yeah,
he's Australian.
He had a rough stage. That steel stage didn't go well for him. But still, I'm proud of it. He and I are very close to each other.
Like that?
He and I are very close to each other in skill set. If we're both shooting limited, it depends on who has a good day or who has a bad day. He's more aggressive than I am, and a lot of times that pays off in his favor. If he has one big mistake on the stage, if he blows one stage real bad, he probably won't beat me. Just depends. But we're both pretty equal to each other. So yeah, coming in honestly, anything in the 90s of him shooting single stack is really good. Single stack it's not comparable to limited on big field courses. Not just the round count, but how you have to shoot stages, your temperament on steel, and how you have to break down a stage versus limited. I really like limited. It's a lot of fun, but most stage breakdowns in limited are I shoot the left half of the stage, I make a reload, and I shoot the right half of the stage.
Yes! Yes!
And I like it. It's really fun. It's less to think about. But
what do you think about Dryfire, Eric?
Okay. So I just want to add some key points to Dryfire. First of all, it's wintertime. I am not dry firing right now. I show up to a match, hang out with my buddies, and that's how I stay frosty through the winter. I'm actually reloading a lot right now, but I'm not dry firing. But when I start back up, a couple of key points that I want to bring up. For me, I always do a warm-up of drawing indexing and reloads, because those are key fundamentals because that's what we're doing no matter what dry fire drill we're doing. We're drawing, we're indexing out to arrays and targets, and we're reloading, whether it's on the move or standing. So I do a couple reps of those just to kind of warm up, loosen up my arms. And indexing is, to me, it's important. Indexing, we do it so much, and it's not just on the draw that you're indexing. You're leaning around a wall, indexing on targets, all that kind of stuff. So I always warm up with those kind of drills. When I'm done with the drill, just because I beat a time or I did it really fast without a timer, to me, to prove that it was not a fluke, I call it the trifecta. I need to do it 3 times perfect. And if I can't do it 3 times perfect, I keep doing it. However, I won't run my hands to the point where they're bleeding to try and accomplish it. Like Kenny had mentioned, I'll reach a point, I'm like, okay, today's not my day to do that. But if I can do it 3 times perfect, then to me that tells me it wasn't a fluke, that I was able to accomplish that. Another thing, too, that I just heard on the Stoger podcast that, I've always kind of felt this way, but it was nice to see somebody else articulate it. I think it was Drunk Keith that brought this point up. But you can actually overdo something in a day to where you're not going to retain it. Everybody has their own point of recall, that you can practice something and there's no point in practicing it anymore because you're wasting it. You're not going to get that hard programmed for the next time you have to do that. And I've always felt that way, and it was kind of nice to see somebody else articulate that. But that's another key point, is don't overdo it. Just because you have a bad day of reloads, don't sit there and reload for another hour, till you get it right. Sometimes you just got to, and Juani brought that up too, with his. Sometimes it's a 15-minute dry fire and he just has to walk away. I think that's a big important thing, is don't overdo something until you master it that night, per se. But yeah, once I start dry firing, those are kind of the key points I'm going to stick to. I'm a big freestyle, just like you guys said. I don't like to follow a set of I get what Steve Anderson said on his podcast, but I like to set up just random stuff depending on where I'm at. If I'm dry firing at work around my desk, I've got a certain target array that I can set up there. If I'm at home in the hallway, I can do some movement, some long-range targets through doorways to other rooms. So it just really depends on where I'm at as far as what I freestyle. I will say, though, when I go to do a live fire, for my first whole year, I was all about setting up mini stages, and I don't do that anymore. I do structured drills that, like Ben Stoger recommends in his live fire book. What's his live fire book called?
I don't remember.
Yeah, but I do structured drills from that, as well as classifiers, because that way I have a foundation to base off my time to what better shooters are shooting, so I can kind of see where my progress is at, and so that's kind of a good bar. So, but that's my 2 cents on dry fire. But anyways.
Cool. I'll hop in real quick. I think it's important to basically find out 2 things. If you're consistent, you need to work on speed, and if you're not fast, you need to work on. Well, hold on. Let me think that through. Yeah, if you're consistent and slow, you need to work on speed. Okay, yeah. But if you're fast and not consistent, you need to work on consistency, right? So there's 2 options. When I first started out, I sucked at everything. So the goal was to go as fast as possible, and so I used a part timer. Once I went to a certain speed, I couldn't get as consistent. I removed the part timer, grew consistency. Now that I've gained consistency and I can do stuff at a somewhat high level, I don't know, I don't want to sound too cocky, but now I'm working on speed almost all the time. I'm working on some kind of speed, and it's a little different than what you guys have said. I use a par timer to drill down my times, and just because I look at it this way, if you're only building consistency, you're going to reach a certain peak and then you're going to plateau. That's the way I look at it. Like, if you look at all these guys, they're not plateauing, they're always going higher and higher, and so the goal is to just drive down those times. So I kind of combined what Steve Anderson told me on the show, and you guys can listen to that. We'll put it in the show notes or whatever. And I've kind of combined my own thing. And so here's my training plan, and I'll post this up on the show notes also. But I'm going to just read off a couple of key points. In the morning, I do 45 minutes. Night, I do 45 minutes. This is just for Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. I do 2 minutes of group shooting, so I always start out with a warm-up. Eric knows this because he's dry fired with me a couple times. But every single time I dry fire, I just get the gun, I get a super good grip, and I just do a group shooting. And then after that, I'm going to kind of trust Steve Anderson here, and I'm going to just do 3 minutes of his first 12 drills just to kind of build that speed on those specific drills. So he has like reloads, draws, and stuff that are very similar to that, and it's in this book, which we can also put in the show notes. But basically just to drill those times down, and so that'll be kind of my speed and consistency thing. And so for the first section, I'll just do speed only, and then for the last section, I'll do consistency. And that's just part of my dry fire. And then for the other 4 days, my plan is to just do, basically, from what I've been doing lately, is I'll build a stage. Let's say that it involves a prone shot, a kneeling shot, or a port entry, or something else. And Eric knows this also, but I split them into 3 groups. So let's say that the first one's a position entry. I'll do the whole stage once or twice just to make sure I can do it, but then I'll break it into a position entry. And so I'll start from the beginning and go to the position entry, and then I'll break it into a position entry to a kneeling. Then I'll go from position entry to kneeling, and then I'll go from kneeling to prone. So I can practice all those different things and build those up separately and drill the times down separately, if that kind of makes sense. Where
you do a progressive, like you do a stage, but it's a progressive motion through the stage.
Exactly, so. And that's just to build the different aspects of that. So that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, and there's some dry fire like drawing that's like that. They talk about drawing the gun up here, or no, I'm sorry, reloads, like getting the mag just to the mag well in a certain part time, and then getting it to the mag well, and then getting it inserted for a part time. You basically do that for a stage. Hey, I had a real quick question. I know you got to get out of here, Wyatt. Yeah. But what did you think about Steve Anderson's talk about going at match pace? So going full pace for those 12 different drills, but at the tail end winding it down to match pace. What do you think about that? That's something that I think.
That's my last 7 minutes. So that's but I think that's important because that's part of my consistency thing. So that's when I drill at the speed, that's the first like 36 minutes or whatever, and then consistency is built in match pace. And I think that's important just because that teaches you that you need to be going that speed for a match. When I was doing dry fire, I was trying to go too fast. Yeah, sorry.
Can I ask, okay, so but if match pace is your ultimate goal because the goal is to win matches, then why don't you spend most of your time practicing match pace, and your match pace will get faster?
So I have a theory on that, and like I said, it's kind of a theory, but my theory is, or at least in my experience that I found, if I only practice match pace, I only stay at that speed. I haven't found fast gains. Does that make sense? So I kind of consider it like if you were a weightlifter. If you were a weightlifter and you lifted, let's say that your max bench was a 425. Okay, I'm just throwing a number. Let's say 225.
Sure.
But your workout weight was a
125
or 180 or whatever. If you just worked out at 180, you're going to just build those same muscles over and over. But if you keep pushing that max up and you work out that max a lot, you're going to eventually build that max up. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. But I think yes, so it does make sense. It didn't work well for me where I was at a while ago, and it's entirely possible that 6 months from now I'll be singing a different tune. But yeah,
I don't know. I mean, my whole goal is to just drill the times down, and then if I practice enough match pace, I should be able to apply those to my match pace. But I see where you're coming from.
Does that almost make you? I mean, do you have to like decide when you go to a match that you like switch into match mode?
No, you know? And Eric knows this probably better than anyone. Well, he shot a match with me out of the 3 of us, or 4 of us. But when I go up there, I just completely clear my mind and I just shoot. I don't think about anything else. And that's the ultimate goal of match mode. And so I would say if you're, like Steve Anderson says, if your match mode's strong, I would suggest doing something like speed, and if it's not, work on match mode.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, so Wyatt's got to get out of here, but I got two things I want to wrap up. I'm going to
just hop off. I'm going to just hop off real quick. Okay, peace.
Cool.
Hey, two things I want to wrap up here with you, Kenny. First of all, this is what a real gun looks like. Tangfolio.
What are all those dumb holes in the side? What's up with that?
And secondly, brother, I need you to keep stealing points from Range Lawyer for me, okay?
Yeah,
you keep stealing those stage points from him for me.
I will take as many points away from him as I possibly can. No doubt about it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So.
Yeah.
All right, Kenny. Well, thank you for being on the show. We'll just have to have you on. Any last words, Juani?
Yeah, I really like what Wyatt said about match mode. I don't really know what he meant about match mode, but I assume it's the mode that he's in when he shoots match. Yeah. When I heard it, what I do for my training is I try to develop my match mode. I don't separate my dry fire mode, live fire training mode, and match mode.
I agree.
Yeah.
I personally think about it this way. if you're training to run a marathon, because what we do is you can relate it to a lot of things. A lot of people relate it to golf. It's not about your best hole. It's about your whole 18 holes, right? Well, if you're training,
Kenny,
if you want to...
Kenny, keep it PG. Keep it PG.
Yeah. Jesus. If you were to relate it to running, which I know nothing about, but I would imagine that if you're trying to become a really great marathon runner, that you wouldn't practice a lot of sprinting. You would practice what you are trying to get good at, which is running whatever. I want to be able to run 10 miles or 12 miles or however, 26 is like a full marathon or whatever. And I could see that there are other things that would be important too, like maybe you could get some gains if you learn to sprint. Maybe you could get some gains if you ran 50 miles, or I don't know, it's like not even humanly possible, but it probably is. But if I don't understand, or I can't see how not spending the majority of your time training for what you're actually going to do, how that would be beneficial, because for at least for me, like I said, that it wasn't. So I like to train, like I said, when the buzzer goes off, it's get a good grip, get the gun out of the holster, see the front sight. When you see the front sight, you pull the trigger. And the more times you do that, you just get better at it. And you're not trying to do it faster. You've just done it so many times that you are going to be faster at it, because you're not limiting your speed slow or fast. It's not about speed. It's about these feelings.
That's the mindset in a match. Right?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
I think most of the people's problem is not choosing my method or Wyatt's method or timer method, no timer method. It's not that. It's just a problem that you have to diagnose yourself.
Right.
If you need timer to boost yourself, you might need a timer. If you need to take off the timer into your Dryfire, it might be helpful for being more consistent and getting your hits down. So you have to diagnose yourself and choose what kind of method to heal your technique.
Yeah, and the shooter that you want to be. If you strive to be consistent, or if you strive to be fast, it's not wrong either way. We have some guys that we shoot with that aren't the most consistent, but when they have a good day, like their dude's gonna burn it down.
Hey, Kenny, I'm sitting right here. Okay, I'm sitting right here. You haven't talked about it like that.
But I think that's okay. Maybe it's just his temperament. At some point, I don't think you can fight who you are too much. Like I'm never going to be an open shooter. Doesn't matter. Even if I could run fast as the wind, it's literally just like not the person that I am. I'm not that aggressive. I wouldn't see the stage in that way. It doesn't even really appeal to me. And there's some people there's guys who shoot limited or open that I see them, I'm like, don't do it. Don't come to the low cap side. It's just not for you. And that's okay.
I really like what you just said. You have to decide whether you are going to be consistent shooter or whatever. So what my decision was, I'm going to be very consistent shooter, but I want to be very fast athlete. That's why I work on my speed in the gym, not in shooting.
Right.
I don't want to work on shooting fast that much, but moving fast, which is actually draw is movement. It's all the way up to here is just movement. So I work on movement speed at the gym by lifting weight or try to move fast, ladder drill or whatever. But in terms of shooting in dry fire or live fire or match, I want to be consistent shooter, but fast athlete, if that makes sense.
What about you, Eric? You've said so little this whole time.
I'm soaking it in from the master shooters that I'm surrounded by. I'm just soaking it in. I'm really looking forward to shooting with Juani. I've watched his videos, but I want to see him in person. I mean, I'm here to learn. You know what I mean? I have some things I can contribute, but I'm mostly here to soak up what knowledge you guys have to spit. So.
Cool.
Anyways, I think that was a good show. Juani, I saw your wife walk around a bunch of times. Can she come out and say hi to us?
Hey, babe. No. She's not gonna.
She's like, no. My girlfriend's currently mad at me because I make her go upstairs when I'm podcasting. She's mad at me. Hey, Kenny, if we have you on the show again, no more cats having sex in the background, okay?
Got it.
It's distracting.
I'll just put her down. I've been looking for a reason to anyway. She's old. She's annoying at this point.
Oh boy.
Her quality of life is zero.
Oh, there she is. Hi, Mrs. Kim.
Oh, he said hi, Mrs. He said hi, Mrs. Kim.
Hi.
Oh, that's right. You got headphones on. She can't hear us.
No, not at all.
Cool. All right, and Bonnie,
Talking to you guys.
next time, know I'm following unicorn heads, okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right.